If you enjoy stories like this, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comment telling us where you're listening from. In the small town of Willow Creek, rural New England, the old mansion on Elderbury Lane was known to all residents as the Glass Mansion, not just because of its enormous windows that reflected the setting sun, but also because of the fragility that seemed to emanate from its walls, as if at any moment it could shatter into 1,000 pieces. On that June night, the biting New England winter wind whipped through the trees of the abandoned garden. Inside the mansion, Augustus Miller watched the rain fall relentlessly through the fogged windows. At 47, the man with graying hair and hollow eyes no longer cared about the deteriorating state of the place that had once been the happiest home in the world. The velvet curtains, once majestic, hung dusty and torn. The cedar furniture, a family heirloom, remained covered by white sheets like ghosts from a distant past. Augustus had lived like this for 3 years, in complete isolation. Ever since he lost Marianne and Luke in the collapse of the Willow Creek Bridge, his life had turned into an endless void. A former renowned architect, he abandoned his projects, his friends, and surrendered to an existence of shadows and silence. The only sounds he still tolerated were the footsteps of Mrs. Josephine, the woman who came twice a week to clean the bare minimum and leave cooked food. On other days, he barely ate. Augustus poured himself another glass of whiskey. The living room clock struck 10:30 when he heard a noise at the front door. At first he thought it was just the wind, but the sound repeated, now louder. Annoyed by the intrusion, he walked slowly down the dark hallway to the entrance. Opening the heavy wooden door, he was paralyzed by the sight before him. A boy, small, soaked, trembling from head to toe. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old. His dark, frightened eyes stared at him with a mixture of fear and plea. His lips, purple with cold, could barely articulate words. "Please, sir." "I'm cold," the child whispered, hugging himself. Augustus remained motionless for a few moments, unable to react. It was as if the world had stopped. For a brief moment, he saw Luke's face superimposed on that of the unknown boy, a hallucination that made him step back. The boy interpreted the gesture as rejection and began to move away, defeated. "Wait!" Augustus's voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable even to himself. "Come in." The boy hesitated, looking back as if searching for another option in the darkness of the night. Finally, he crossed the mansion's threshold with shaky steps, leaving a trail of water on the marble floor. "What's your name?" Augustus asked, closing the door. Leo Sutton." Augustus led the boy to the kitchen, the only truly inhabited room in the house. He turned on the old heater and grabbed a clean towel from the cupboard. "Dry yourself. I'll get you some clothes." As he looked for something that might fit the boy, Augustus felt his heart beat in a different way. It was almost painful, as if the organ was awakening after years of dormancy. He found an old T-shirt of Luke's that might fit Leo. He held the fabric between his fingers for a moment, feeling the almost imperceptible scent that still lingered there. With a sigh, he took the clothes to the kitchen. Leo was sitting at the table, wrapped in the towel, his curious eyes scanning every detail of the room. When he noticed Augustus, he tried to smile, but his lips still trembled. "Put this on," Augustus said, handing him the T-shirt. "It'll be big, but it's better than wet clothes." "What were you doing out in this storm?" Leo changed without ceremony, the innocence of childhood still intact. The T-shirt reached almost to his knees. "I'm looking for my mom," he replied simply. "She went to work and never came back. I waited and waited. Then the money ran out and there was no more food at home." "How long has that been?" "I don't really know. I think 3 days. Augustus felt a pang in his chest. 3 days alone, a boy that age. "Don't you have anyone? Father? Grandparents?" Leo shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. "I only have my mom. And now I don't even know where she is." A tear rolled down the child's face, followed by another and another. Soon Leo was sobbing, a suppressed cry as if he were used to suffering in silence. Augustus didn't know what to do. Comforting someone was a skill he had forgotten. Without thinking, he reached out and touched the boy's wet hair, an awkward but sincere gesture. "You must be hungry," he said, turning to the stove. "Mrs. Josephine left some soup." "I'll warm it up." While heating the soup, Augustus watched Leo from the corner of his eye. The boy was calmer now, his attentive eyes following his movements. There was something familiar in that gaze, a mixture of fragility and determination that deeply disturbed him. "Do you live alone in this huge house?" Leo asked suddenly. "Yes. Aren't you scared?" Augustus almost laughed. "Scared? What else could happen that hadn't already?" "No, I'm not scared, and I am. At home, when it got dark, I always turned on all the lights. But yesterday, the power went out." The boy's simplicity was disconcerting. Augustus served the soup in a bowl and placed it in front of Leo, who devoured the food as if he hadn't seen food in days, which was probably true. "What's your mother like?" Augustus asked. "Where does she work?" Between spoonfuls, Leo explained. "My mom is pretty. Her name is Camilla. She cleans houses, cooks in other people's houses. She was going to start a new job, said it would be good because we would have more money, but she would have to sleep at work. And she left you alone?" "No." Leo seemed offended. "She never leaves me alone. She said the neighbor, Mrs. Helen, would take care of me, but no one showed up at my house. I kept waiting." The boy's indignation softened something inside Augustus. It was clear that Camilla would not abandon her son willingly. Something had happened. "Do you know where this new job is?" Leo shook his head. "She just said it was in a big house far away, that the boss was rich." Augustus sighed. A big house and a rich boss didn't narrow down the possibilities much in a town like Willow Creek, full of summer homes for wealthy city dwellers from New England's major cities. After finishing the soup, Leo's eyes began to droop. The warmth of the food and the relative comfort after days of fear had relaxed his small, exhausted body. Augustus realized he needed to make a decision. "You can sleep here tonight," he said finally. "Tomorrow we'll try to find your mother." Leo's face lit up. "Really, sir? You'll help me find my mom?" Something in the hopeful tone of that voice made Augustus feel a long-forgotten emotion. It wasn't happiness, not even satisfaction. It was purpose. "I'll try," he replied cautiously. "But I can't promise anything. Willow Creek has many big houses. We'll find her, I know we will." Leo's childlike confidence was unshakable. Augustus led the boy to the guest room, the least dusty in the house. He tidied the bed sheets and improvised pajamas with another old t-shirt. "If you need anything." "I'm in the room at the end of the hall," he said, uncomfortable with the role of host after so long. Leo nodded, but when Augustus turned to leave, a small hand held his wrist. "Sir, thank you. I was so scared out there." Augustus felt his throat tighten. He couldn't answer. He just nodded and quickly left the room, closing the door behind him. In the dark hallway, he leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. What was he doing? Taking in an unknown boy, promising to help him? He could barely help himself. In recent years, he had become a ghost, inhabiting a house of painful memories, unable to move on. And now there was Leo, a lost boy, alone in the world, desperately searching for his mother. The situation was so familiar it was cruel. Augustus walked to his room and opened the nightstand drawer. There was the photo, the last photo of the three of them. Him, Marianne and Luke smiling on Brighton Beach, unaware that only 2 weeks remained before the collapse. He sat on the bed, holding the picture frame between his trembling fingers. How was it possible that, after 3 years of almost complete isolation, fate would place a helpless child in his path? Was it some kind of sign? Augustus no longer believed in signs. He didn't believe in anything. But that night, for the first time in a long time, he fell asleep, thinking not just about what he had lost, but about what he could do the next day. There was a purpose, however small. There was someone who needed him. As sleep overcame him, Augustus didn't notice that the storm outside had ceased. The clouds slowly moved away, revealing a full moon that bathed the abandoned garden of the glass mansion with its silver light. It was as if even nature suspected that something was changing in that place of silences and absences. The sun had not yet risen when Augustus awoke. It took him a few seconds to remember that he was no longer alone in the house. The thought made him get up quickly, filled with a concern he hadn't felt in years. He dressed and walked to the guest room, opening the door slowly. Leo slept soundly, curled up in the white sheets like a small cocoon. His calm breathing contrasted with the agitation of the previous day. Augustus watched the boy for a moment, noticing the delicate features of his face, his long eyelashes, his dark, curly hair falling over his forehead. There was a purity in that image that made him feel a tightness in his chest. He left the room quietly and went to the kitchen to prepare a decent breakfast. He realized, embarrassed, that there was little food in the house. Mrs. Josephine always complained about his lack of appetite, and he rarely bothered to restock the pantry. He found milk, some slightly stale bread, a few eggs, and coffee. It would have to be enough. While preparing the eggs, Augustus planned the day. They needed to find clues about Camilla's whereabouts. The boy had mentioned his house, which had been abandoned for 3 days. It was the obvious starting point. Augustus tried to recall the names of the employment agencies in town, places where a domestic worker might look for work. "Good morning." The childish voice surprised him. Leo was standing at the kitchen door, his hair disheveled, his eyes still sleepy, but with a renewed sparkle. "Good morning," Augustus replied awkwardly. "Did you sleep well?" "Uh-huh. Your house is very big, you know." There's an echo in the hallways. A slight smile appeared on Augustus's lips. "It's an old house, Guy. It's beautiful. It looks like a castle." Augustus indicated a chair for Leo, who sat down, watching the man's every move intently. "You cook like my mum," he commented. "She also stirs the egg like that very fast." The comparison made Augustus uncomfortable. He served Leo's plate with scrambled eggs and toast, placing a glass of milk beside it. "We'll need to buy food," he said, more to himself than to the boy. "I don't have much here. My house ran out of everything too," Leo replied, devouring his breakfast with appetite. "I tried to make instant noodles, but I couldn't light the stove properly." The idea of such a small child trying to fend for himself made Augustus feel a pang of anger. What kind of neighbor was this Mrs. Helen, who had abandoned the boy to his fate? "Leo, can you take me to your house? Do you remember the address?" The boy nodded, his mouth full of bread. "It's in Hopewell Heights, near the bus terminal." The yellow house with a blue gate, number 17. Augustus knew the neighborhood. It was a simple area on the outskirts of Willow Creek, quite far from the upscale zone where the glass mansion was located. How had Leo traveled such a distance alone? "How did you get here last night?" Leo swallowed the last piece of toast before answering. "Walking. I left home looking for my mom, but it was dark and it started to rain. I saw the lights of your house from afar. It looked like a lighthouse." A lighthouse? The comparison was ironic. In recent years, Augustus had done everything to hide from the world, so that no one would find him. And yet somehow his house had served as a guide for a child lost in the storm. After breakfast, Augustus grabbed his coat and car keys, an old Volvo he rarely used. Leo followed him, excited at the prospect of finding his mother. The drive to Hopewell Heights was made in relative silence. Leo looked out the window, occasionally pointing to places he recognized. The town of Willow Creek unfolded outside, gradually transforming from elegant neighborhoods into simpler areas, until they reached the outskirts. Hopewell Heights was a cluster of simple houses, most unfinished, with exposed bricks and asbestos roofs. Children played in the dirt streets, dogs roamed freely, and women chatted at their gates. A world completely different from the isolation of the glass mansion. Following Leo's directions, Augustus finally stopped in front of a small yellow house with a faded blue gate. The number 17 was hand-painted on the outer wall. "Hey, it's here!" Leo exclaimed, unbuckling his seatbelt in a hurry. "Let's see if my mom came back." Augustus felt a pang in his heart. He knew by the logic of the circumstances that it was unlikely Camilla was there. Even so, he accompanied the boy to the gate, which was unlocked. The small yard was neglected, with clothes still on the line, hardened by the sun and rain of recent days. The house door was closed but not locked. Leo went in calling for his mother, his voice echoing in the empty house. The interior was simple but clean and organized. A small living room with a worn sofa, an old television, a few photos on the walls. The open-plan kitchen had few utensils, everything very simple but with clear signs of care. There were 2 bedrooms, a larger one with a double bed and a tiny one, with a single bed decorated with a colorful superhero comforter. "She's not here," Leo said, disappointment evident in his voice. Augustus examined the place, looking for clues. On the kitchen table were some utility bills, simple correspondence. On the refrigerator, held by a fruit-shaped magnet, he found a handwritten note. "Home and Family Agency. Interview June 15th at 9 a.m. Bring documents and references. Leo, what day did your mother leave home? The boy thought for a moment, counting on his fingers. It was the 15th. I remember because it was Mrs. Helen's birthday, and Mom said she was going to buy a cake after work. Augustus checked the calendar hanging on the wall. It was the 18th. Camilla had gone to the interview 3 days ago and apparently had not returned. What could have happened? Let's look for something else that might help us, Augustus suggested, trying to remain calm for Leo, who seemed increasingly dejected. In Camilla's room, they found her document bag open on the bed. ID card, social security number, work card, everything was there. However, a plastic folder labeled references was empty. Your mother took her work references, Augustus commented thoughtfully. What are references? They are letters that former employers write, saying she is a good employee. On the nightstand next to the bed, there was an old cell phone plugged into the charger. Augustus picked it up, hesitant. Is this your mother's phone? No, this one's broken. She took hers. Augustus tried to turn on the device, but the battery was completely dead. He plugged the charger back in and waited a few minutes. When he managed to turn it on, he saw that there was no SIM card, only a few photos saved in the internal memory. Photos of Leo at school, Leo at the park, Leo blowing out candles on a modest cake. And then one photo caught his attention. Camilla. A young, beautiful woman, with curly hair like her son's, smiling shyly at the camera. There was something in her gaze that conveyed strength and determination, even through the pixelated image. That's my mom, Leo exclaimed, looking over Augustus's shoulder. Augustus nodded, memorizing Camilla's face. Now he had a face to look for. In the kitchen, they found a phone book with some names and numbers. Augustus first called Helen neighbor, but no one answered. He then tried Sarah, work friend, and after 3 rings, a female voice answered. Hello? Good morning, my name is Augustus Miller. I'm looking for Camilla Sutton. Do you know her? There was a brief silence on the line. Who is this again? Augustus Miller. I'm with her son, Leo. We're trying to locate Camilla. The woman seemed hesitant. Her son? Little Leo? What happened? Where is Camilla? That's exactly what we're trying to find out. Leo was alone at home for 3 days. Camilla went to a job interview at the Home and Family Agency on the 15th, and she hasn't returned. My God, Sarah's voice sounded genuinely concerned. She called me on the 16th, said she had gotten a good job with housing, at a rich family's house in Clearwater Estates. She said Mrs. Helen was going to stay with the boy for a few days, until she settled in and could bring him. What do you mean the boy was alone? That irresponsible Mrs. Helen. Clearwater Estates, the luxury condominium on the outskirts of the town, where wealthy city dwellers from New England's major cities kept their country homes. Do you know the employers' names? Or the exact address? No, she didn't say. She just said it was a huge mansion with a pool and everything, that the boss was demanding but paid well. Camilla was so happy. She really needed this job after her previous employer fired her without just cause. Augustus thanked her for the information and hung up, explaining to Leo what they had discovered. We're going to that employment agency, he decided. They should have a record of where your mother went. Before they left, Augustus helped Leo gather some clothes and personal belongings, putting everything into a Spider-Man backpack they found in the boy's room. As Leo chose what to take, Augustus couldn't help but notice the modest but dignified conditions in which they lived. There was love in that small home, visible in the careful organization of the few belongings, in the lovingly arranged photos, in the children's book stacked beside the bed. Back in the car, Augustus and Leo headed for the town center, where the Home and Family Agency was located. The building was simple, with a worn sign on the facade. Inside, a few women waited, sitting on plastic chairs, all with folders similar to the empty one they had found at Camilla's house. At the reception, an older woman with thick glasses received them with indifference. How can I help you? We're looking for information about Camilla Sutton, Augustus explained. She came here for an interview on the 15th of this month. The receptionist typed something on the old computer. Yes, Camilla Sutton, domestic worker, 32 years old. She was referred to the Harrington residence in Clearwater Estates, Lakeview Gardens condominium, House 7. Leo squeezed Augustus's hand, hope renewed in his eyes. "And can you give us the phone number of the residence?" Augustus asked. The woman hesitated. "I'm not authorized to provide contractor. Zeite want company policy." Augustus felt his irritation grow, but he contained himself. "Madam, this is Camilla's son. She hasn't returned home in 3 days, and the boy has been alone all this time. We need to find her urgently." The receptionist's expression softened as she looked at Leo, who stared at her with pleading eyes. "I understand, but I cannot provide the phone number. What I can do is call there and inform them that you are looking for her. Leave your contact information." Augustus provided his number, frustrated with the bureaucracy, but understanding that it was progress. At least now they had a name and an address. "We're going there," he told Leo as they left the agency. "Lakeview Gardens is about 30 minutes from here." Leo nodded, clinging to his Spider-Man backpack as if it were a protective shield. "Do you think we'll find my mom?" Augustus looked into the boy's eyes, seeing there the same anguish he himself had carried for years. The pain of loss, the uncertainty of the future. "We'll find her, Leo, I promise." And in making that promise, Augustus felt something break within him. A barrier he had built to protect himself from the world, to avoid caring, to not suffer again. That boy, with his innocence and his pain, had found a breach in his defenses. As he drove towards Clearwater Estates, Augustus found himself praying in silence, something he hadn't done since the collapse, not for himself but for Leo and Camilla, so that they could be reunited, so that the world wouldn't be so unfair to another child. The old Volvo cut through the tree-lined road, bringing them closer and closer to answers, or new questions. The midday sun shone brightly, illuminating Leo's face, who looked out the window with renewed hope. Augustus realized that, for the first time in a long time, he too felt a spark of hope. A small flame, fragile but present. Lakeview Gardens was the most exclusive condominium in Clearwater Estates. Surrounded by high walls and protected by a sophisticated security system, the place housed imposing mansions of influential families from Boston and other major New England cities who sought refuge from the bustling capital on weekends. At the main entrance, a guardhouse with 2 uniformed security guards rigorously filtered who entered and left. When Augustus's Volvo stopped in front of the barrier, one of the guards approached with a suspicious expression. "Good morning. Can I help you?" "Good morning. We're looking for the Harrington residence, House 7. The security guard scrutinized Augustus and Leo with a critical eye. "Do you have authorization to enter?" Augustus hesitated. "Actually, no. We are looking for Camilla Sutton, who works at the Harrington house. This is her son." The security guard frowned. "I'm sorry, but without prior authorization I cannot allow entry. It's condominium policy." Leo leaned forward in his seat, looking anxiously out the window. "Please, sir." "I just want to see my mum." The security guard seemed disconcerted by the child's pleading gaze, but remained firm. "I can call the residence and check if they authorize the visit." "What's your name, sir?" "Augustus Miller." "And this is Leo Sutton." The security guard entered the guardhouse and made the call. Augustus nervously watched in the rearview mirror as a line of cars began to form behind them. After a few minutes that felt like an eternity, the man returned. "Mrs. Harrington has authorized your entry. Follow the main avenue, turn right on the 3rd Street. It's the mansion with a white gate and gold accents." Augustus breathed a sigh of relief and thanked him. The barrier lifted, and they entered the condominium. The contrast with Hopewell Heights was stark. Here, perfectly paved streets were lined with immaculate gardens and houses that looked more like palaces, each with its particular architectural style. Pools shimmered under the sun, and uniformed gardeners meticulously cared for the vegetation. "Wow, what a beautiful place," Leo murmured, his nose pressed against the glass. "It looks like something from a movie." Augustus nodded, silent. As an architect, he had designed houses for people of this social standing before. He knew well the chasm that separated those mansions from the small yellow house with the blue gate. Following the directions, they soon found House 7. The white gate with gold accents was imposing, surrounded by a perfectly trimmed hedge. Augustus pressed the intercom. "Harrington residence," a female voice answered. "Augustus Miller and Leo Sutton." "We are looking for Camilla Sutton." Without a response, the gate began to open automatically. They followed a stone driveway until they reached a neoclassical mansion with majestic columns and a marble staircase. At the door, a middle-aged woman, elegantly dressed, awaited them with a barely disguised expression of displeasure. "Good morning. I am Cecilia Harrington. How can I help you?" Before Augustus could answer, Leo intervened. "Is my mom here?" "Camilla Sutton." The woman looked at the boy as if he were a stain on her Persian rug. "Ah, you must be the new maid's son." "Yes, she is working here. Can I see her?" Leo asked, his eyes shining with hope. Cecilia hesitated, visibly displeased. "She is busy at the moment cleaning the upstairs suites. I don't like to interrupt service." Augustus felt anger rising within him but maintained his composure. "Mrs. Harrington, Leo was alone for 3 days because there was a misunderstanding. The neighbor who was supposed to look after him didn't show up, and he didn't know where his mother was. It's an emergency." Cecilia's expression wavered between surprise and irritation. "I was not aware of this. Camilla assured me her son was being well cared for. This is a serious problem. I hired a live-in employee precisely to avoid absences and family problems interfering with work." Leo clutched Augustus's hand, clearly intimidated by the woman. "Please," Augustus insisted. "Just a few minutes," Cecilia sighed dramatically. "Very well. Wait here." She entered the house, leaving them standing on the staircase. Leo looked anxiously at the door, unable to contain his agitation. Augustus placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support. Minutes later, the door opened again. A young woman, dressed in a grey uniform and white apron, appeared with wide eyes of surprise. "Leo!" "Mum!" The boy ran up the stairs, throwing himself into Camilla's arms, who knelt to hug him. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she squeezed her son against her chest, kissing his forehead repeatedly. "My son, what happened?" "Didn't Mrs. Helen stay with you?" No, Mum. No one came to our house. I was alone. The food ran out and I got scared." Camilla looked at her son in horror, then at Augustus, who watched the scene with a lump in his throat. "Who are you, sir?" "Augustus Miller. Leo appeared at my door last night during the storm. He was looking for you." Camilla hugged her son again, despair evident on her face. "I didn't know. I left money with Mrs. Helen, asked her to take care of him. She promised she would." Cecilia Harrington reappeared at the door, observing the scene with clear disapproval. "This is unacceptable, Camilla. You assured me your son was being cared for. I cannot have employees whose personal problems interfere with their work." Camilla stood up, still holding Leo. "Madam, please, I didn't know. The neighbor who was supposed to take care of him—" "It doesn't concern me," Cecilia cut her off coldly. "The rules were clear from the beginning. Live-in employees cannot bring children or relatives. This house is not a daycare." Camilla paled. "But madam, my son was alone. He has no one else." That's your problem, not mine," Cecilia replied coldly. "You have 2 options. Either you keep the job and arrange for someone reliable to take care of the boy, or you leave right now. I cannot have this kind of instability in my home." Augustus watched the despair grow on Camilla's face. She squeezed Leo against her, as if fearing someone would snatch him from her arms. It was clear she needed that job, but she also couldn't abandon her son again. "I can take care of Leo temporarily." The words left Augustus's mouth before he even realized what he was saying. All eyes turned to him. "What?" Camilla asked, confused. "I have a big house, enough space. Leo already spent the night there. He can stay with me until you settle in and can pick him up." Cecilia smiled, satisfied with the convenient solution. "See? Problem solved. Now get back to work, Camilla. The upstairs suites are still not clean and my guests arrive at 4. But Camilla didn't move. She looked at Augustus with suspicion. "Why would you do that, sir? You don't even know me." "Mom, Mr. Augustus is nice," Leo intervened. "His house looks like a castle, and he's been helping me look for you since yesterday." Augustus cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Look, I understand your concern. I'm a stranger, but Leo needs someone now, and you need this job. It's not a permanent solution, just until you can find another alternative." Camilla seemed torn between the fear of trusting a stranger and the desperation of her situation. She looked at her son, then at her employer, who was tapping her foot impatiently. "I don't have many options, do I?" she murmured, more to herself than to the others. Then, addressing Augustus, "Can I have your phone number?" "And your full address?" "Of course. You can call him whenever you want. And on Sundays, your day off, you can visit him." Augustus took out an old business card from his pocket, from the days when he still worked as an architect, and wrote his cell phone number on the back. He handed it to Camilla, who carefully put it in her uniform pocket. "Leo, my love," she said, kneeling again to be at her son's height, "Mommy will have to stay here working for now. You'll stay with Mr. Augustus for a few days, until I can find a place where we can be together, okay?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But I missed you. I thought you had left me." "Never, my son. I will never leave you. It's just for a short time, I promise. And on Sundays I'll visit you, and we'll spend the day together." Camilla hugged her son for a long time, whispering promises and words of affection in his ear. Cecilia watched the scene with growing impatience. "That's enough, Camilla. Work to do." With a final kiss on Leo's forehead, Camilla said goodbye. Augustus noticed her discreetly wiping away tears as she walked away, returning inside the mansion. On the way back, Leo remained silent, looking out the window with a thoughtful expression. Augustus respected his silence, understanding that the boy was processing complex emotions for his age: the relief of finding his mother, the sadness of separation, the uncertainty of the future. "Mr. Augustus?" Leo called finally. "Yes? Why didn't that woman let my mom stay with me?" The question was simple, but laden with an injustice that would be difficult to explain to a child. Sometimes people, rich people especially, don't understand other people's problems. They make rules thinking only about what's convenient for them. Is that fair? Augustus sighed. "No, it's not fair. But your mom needs that job to take care of you. And we're going to help her by staying together until she can pick you up." Leo nodded, seemingly satisfied with the explanation. After a few more minutes of silence, he asked, "And where are your wife and son? Your house has pictures of them, I saw." The question hit Augustus like a punch to the stomach. He had forgotten that the photos were still there, silent witnesses to a lost happiness. They're gone. 3 years ago. Where did they go? Another country? Augustus gripped the steering wheel tightly, searching for words a child could understand without traumatizing him. "No, Leo. They're in heaven." "There was an accident." Leo was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. "Are you sad?" "Yes, very. My mom says that when you're sad, a hug helps." Before Augustus could respond, he felt Leo's small arm wrap around his right shoulder, an awkward child's hug. The gesture, so simple and sincere, almost made him lose control of the car. A lump formed in his throat, and he had to take a deep breath to control his emotion. "Thank you, Leo," he managed to say, finally. The boy smiled, satisfied that he had helped, and settled back into the passenger seat. The rest of the journey passed in a lighter silence. When they arrived at the glass mansion, it was already past noon. Augustus realized they urgently needed to go shopping. The refrigerator was practically empty, and now he had a child to feed. "Leo, let's put your things away and then go to the supermarket." "We need to buy food and some things for you." The boy nodded, enthusiastic about the idea. Augustus took him to the guest room, which would be his temporarily. He helped him put away the few clothes they had brought from Camilla's house. As he opened the drawers of the old dresser, Augustus realized how impersonal and cold that room was, like the rest of the house. It was not a suitable environment for a child. "Leo, after shopping, we can stop by a department store and buy some things to make the room more colorful. What do you think?" The boy's eyes widened. "Like what?" "I don't know. A new comforter, maybe some toys with... Can I choose?" "Of course." Leo's smile lit up his face, and Augustus felt something stir within him. It was as if a window had been opened in a long, closed room, letting in some fresh air. At the supermarket, Augustus watched, amused, Leo's enthusiasm as he chose the food. The cart soon filled with things that hadn't entered the glass mansion in years: cream-filled cookies, juice boxes, colorful cereal, chocolate. Augustus added healthier items: fruits, vegetables, meats, fresh bread. For the first time in a long time, he felt pleasure in thinking about meals. In the school supplies section, Leo stopped in front of a Spider-Man backpack, newer and prettier than his worn one. "How beautiful!" he exclaimed, touching the fabric with reverence. Augustus picked up the backpack and put it in the cart. Yours? Leo stared at him, confused. But I already have one. This one is newer. And it matches the notebook and pencil case we're going to buy. Leo's eyes sparkled with excitement when he realized Augustus had also put a complete set of superhero-themed school supplies in the cart. Are you going to give me all this? I am. You need to study while you're with me, don't you? Leo threw his arms around Augustus's waist, hugging him tightly. The gesture took Augustus by surprise, leaving him momentarily speechless. Thank you, Mr. Augustus. You're the best friend I've ever had. Friend. The word echoed in Augustus's mind. When was the last time someone considered him a friend? In recent years, he had systematically pushed away anyone who tried to get close. And now that boy who barely knew him called him best friend. You're welcome, Leo, he replied, hesitantly placing his hand on the boy's head. Now come on, we have more shopping to do. At the department store, Leo chose an Avengers comforter, a spaceship-shaped lamp, and some toys, toy cars, a puzzle, and a soccer ball. Augustus added new clothes, pajamas, and a pair of sneakers, noticing that the boy's shoes were quite worn. Back at the glass mansion, they spent the rest of the afternoon transforming the guest room into a child's space. Augustus found some boxes of Luke's old toys in the attic, which he had kept without the courage to get rid of them. With hesitation, he brought them to Leo, who was amazed by the collection cars and board games. That night, after a dinner where Leo ate with appetite the lasagna they prepared together, Augustus received a call. It was Camilla. Hello, Mr. Augustus. It's Camilla. I wanted to know how my son is. He's fine, Camilla. We just had dinner. Do you want to talk to him? Please. Augustus handed the phone to Leo, who excitedly began telling his mother about the day, the shopping, the gifts, the new room. Augustus stepped away to give them privacy, but he could hear Leo's excited voice. When the boy finally returned the phone, Camilla thanked Augustus with a choked voice. You don't even know me, and you're doing all this for my son. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. Leo is a great boy. And to be honest, his company is doing me good. Even so, I want you to know it's temporary. I'm saving money, and as soon as possible I'll rent a place where we can be together. Mrs. Harrington said that if I work well, in 3 months I can negotiate longer days off. Don't worry, Leo can stay here as long as necessary. After hanging up, Augustus went to check on Leo. The boy was already in bed, exhausted after the busy day, but still fighting sleep to finish a chapter of the adventure book they had bought. Time for bed. Leo, tomorrow you can continue reading. Leo closed the book reluctantly but didn't argue. Mr. Augustus, can I ask you something? Of course. Now, why are you helping me? And helping my mom? The question caught Augustus off guard. Why, after all? Why had he opened his house and his heart to that unknown boy? Because... He began, searching for the right words. Because sometimes people need each other. And because you remind me that there is still goodness in the world. Leo seemed to reflect on the answer, his little eyes already heavy with sleep. Can we play soccer in the garden tomorrow? Augustus smiled. Of course. Now sleep. Leo snuggled into the new sheets, hugging the small teddy bear that Augustus had discreetly included in the purchases. Good night, Mr. Augustus. Good night, Leo. As he turned off the light, leaving only the spaceship lamp on, Augustus felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. Outside, the night was clear, with a starry sky visible through the mansion windows. The same stars he had observed so many times with Luke, inventing stories about constellations. Perhaps, Augustus thought, there were still stories to be told. Perhaps fate, or whatever force governed the universe, had other plans for him besides loneliness and bitterness. With that thought, he went to his room. On the way, he stopped in front of the living room window, observing the abandoned garden. Tomorrow he decided he would start taking care of it, so that Leo would have a better place to play soccer. Weeks passed quickly in the glass mansion, bringing with them transformations Augustus had never imagined possible. What had begun as a temporary refuge for Leo had become an unexpected partnership that deeply changed them both. Mrs. Josephine, the old cleaner who came twice a week, couldn't hide her astonishment with each visit. The mansion, which for 3 years had been a mausoleum of painful memories, was coming back to life. The curtains, once always closed, now remained open to let in the sunlight. The sheets that covered the furniture had been removed, revealing the elegant furnishings hidden for so long. The garden, once a tangle of weeds and untrimmed bushes, began to show signs of care. "I never thought I'd see this house like this again, Mr. Augustus," Mrs. Josephine commented one morning, watching Leo run across the freshly mown lawn chasing a ball. "You look 10 years younger." Augustus didn't answer, but he knew she was right. Something had changed within him. Leo's presence demanded action, movement, life. It was impossible to remain submerged in his grief when there was a child depending on him, asking constant questions, wanting to learn new things, needing attention and care. The routine they established had the healing effect of normalcy. Breakfast together, then a few hours of study. Augustus had discovered that Leo was behind in literacy and decided to help him. Lunch, playtime, more study or reading, dinner, and a story before bed. On Sundays, Camilla came to visit, and these were days of special joy for Leo. Augustus observed with a mixture of admiration and respect the deep bond between mother and son. Camilla was a woman of extraordinary strength, who faced difficult working conditions and separation from her son with impressive dignity. On her third visit, Camilla brought a homemade cake she had baked in her employer's kitchen during her day off. "It's a small way to thank you for everything you're doing for us," she said shyly. Handing the cake to Augustus, Augustus accepted it with a smile. "You don't need to thank me, Camilla. Leo's company has been therapeutic." She nodded, understanding more than he imagined. "He told me about your wife and son. I'm so sorry." Augustus felt the familiar tightness in his chest, but this time it wasn't as suffocating as before. "Thank you. Those were difficult times. You were an architect, weren't you?" "Leo showed me your drawings, the projects he found in the office. They're beautiful." "I was, yes. A long time ago. Why did you stop?" The question was simple, but the answer was not. How to explain that every line he drew on paper reminded him of Luke, who loved to draw by his side? How to explain that every project made him think of Marianne, who had always been his first critic and biggest supporter? "I lost my inspiration," he finally replied. Camilla studied him with her dark, perceptive eyes. "I know how that feels. When Leo's father abandoned us, I thought I wouldn't be able to move forward. But then I looked at my son and found strength. Sometimes we need to live for someone other than ourselves." Camilla's words stayed with Augustus long after she said goodbye, promising to return next Sunday. To live for someone other than himself. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing now with Leo? That night, after putting the boy to sleep, Augustus went to his old office. The door had remained locked for 3 years, but Leo, in his natural curiosity, had discovered it and asked what was inside. Augustus, surprising himself, opened the door and showed the boy his old world. Now alone, he turned on the light and looked around. The drawing board, the tubes with old projects, the carefully organized pencils, the rulers, set squares, compasses. Everything remained as he had left it the day he learned of the collapse. With a sigh, he sat in the old swivel chair and opened a drawer. There were the unfinished projects, including the last one he had worked on, a children's school for an underprivileged community. Augustus's fingers brushed the paper, yellowed with time. For an instant, he felt the urge to close the drawer, lock the door again, and return to his comfort zone, to his familiar and predictable pain. But then he remembered Leo asking why adults built such big houses for so few people, while other families lived cramped in tiny spaces. With a decisive movement, Augustus picked up a pencil and began to draw soft lines on the paper. It wasn't the school project, but something new. A small house, simple, functional, welcoming. The kind of place where a single mother and her son could live with dignity. Hours passed without him noticing. When he finally looked up, surprised by the ease with which the ideas had flowed, the clock read 3 in the morning. Augustus smiled, feeling a satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. He carefully folded the drawing and left the office, now with the purpose of using it again, not as a sanctuary of memories, but as a space for creation. The next day during breakfast, Leo noticed something different about Augustus. "You're happy today," the boy observed, with the characteristic shrewdness of children. "Am I?" Augustus was surprised by the perception. "Maybe I am. Is it because we're going to the park?" Augustus had promised to take Leo to the town's water park, an outing the boy eagerly awaited. That too. But I did something last night that made me satisfied. What? A drawing. A project. I'll show you later. Leo's eyes shone with curiosity. A house project? Like those in your office? Yes, but different. A small house for people like... Augustus paused, suddenly aware of what he was about to say. Like me and my mum, Leo completed without showing any embarrassment. Something like that. A functional, comfortable house that doesn't cost much to build. Leo thoughtfully chewed his toast with jelly. It would be nice if everyone had nice houses, wouldn't it? The simplicity of the observation deeply affected Augustus. Yes, it would be. And perhaps this was a worthy purpose for his dormant talents. The trip to the water park was a success. Seeing Leo sliding down the slides, laughing heartily, filled Augustus with a joy he had forgotten was possible to feel. Together they swam in the pool, had ice cream, and took photos they would later print to show Camilla. While watching Leo play with other children, Augustus reflected on how his life had changed in such a short time. A month ago he was a broken man, living in the shadows of an empty mansion, drinking to forget, waiting for the days to pass without purpose. Now he was in a public park, basking in the sun, surrounded by the sound of children's laughter, planning the dinner he would prepare later, thinking about new architectural projects. On the way back home, Leo fell asleep in the back seat of the car, exhausted after a day of play. Augustus adjusted the rearview mirror to observe him. The boy's serene face, the soft freckles on his nose, his curly hair still damp from the pool. How was it possible that a stranger, a child who had appeared by chance at his door, had become so important in his life? The answer, Augustus realized, was simple and complex at the same time. Leo had given him what he had lost in the collapse, a purpose, someone to wake up for in the morning, someone to strive for, someone whose well-being mattered more than his own pain. The following days were filled with intense activity in the office. Augustus revived old contacts, sent emails, made calls. He presented his new project, a series of affordable housing units with intelligent design and accessible costs, to a construction company specializing in social housing. To his surprise, there was immediate interest. The concept was innovative, quality homes that low-income people could afford. One sunny afternoon, while Augustus was explaining to Leo how a model worked, the phone rang. It was the director of the construction company, confirming that the project had been approved and that they wanted to hire Augustus as a consultant for its implementation. "That's great," Leo exclaimed, hearing the news. "You're going to build houses for people who need them, just like you drew for me and my mom." Augustus smiled, touched by how the boy instinctively understood the importance of it. "It's a start. Leo, a new beginning, actually." That night, after putting Leo to bed, Augustus called Camilla to share the good news. She was genuinely happy for him, and Augustus realized how much her opinion mattered to him. "You seem like a different person," Camilla commented. "When we first met, your eyes were so empty." "I was a different person," Augustus admitted. "Your son transformed me." There was a brief silence on the line, and then Camilla said, her voice choked, "He has that gift of making people fall in love with life again." "Yes, he does," Augustus agreed, feeling a different emotion when thinking about Camilla, an emotion he wasn't ready to name yet. 2 weeks later, as August began to show the first signs of approaching autumn, Camilla appeared at the glass mansion on a weekday, outside her usual day off. Augustus, who was in the garden with Leo, was surprised to see her at the gate. "Camilla, has something happened?" The expression on her face was hard to read. There was excitement, anxiety, and something more. "I did it," she exclaimed as Leo ran to hug her. "Mr. Augustus, I did it." "I did what, Mom?" "An apartment." "One of your projects, Mr. Augustus, is going to be built right here in Willow Creek, and the construction company offered one of the first apartments at a special price. With what I've saved these months and a small loan, I'll be able to buy it," Leo shouted with joy, hugging his mother tightly. Augustus felt a mixture of happiness and a strange melancholy. Of course, he was happy for Camilla and Leo to have their own home, but the thought of the glass mansion without the boy's presence was unsettling. "That's wonderful, Camilla," he managed to say sincerely. "When are you moving?" "Oh, in 2 weeks. The house is ready, I just need to buy some basic furniture. And she hesitated, biting her lower lip. I resigned from the Harrington house. Really? Leo seemed disbelieving. Really? I couldn't stand the way Mrs. Cecilia treated me anymore. And besides, I got a better job. I'm going to be the building superintendent where I bought the apartment. The salary is less, but I get free housing and I can be with you all the time, son. Augustus was genuinely happy for her. Camilla deserved that achievement after so much sacrifice. We need to celebrate, he said. How about a special dinner tonight? Camilla accepted the invitation, and the three spent a pleasant afternoon making plans for the new home. Leo was radiant at the prospect of living with his mother again, although he occasionally cast worried glances at Augustus, as if fearing he might be sad. During dinner, while Leo excitedly talked about a book he was reading, Augustus watched mother and son, feeling a tightness in his chest. In a few weeks, the house would be empty again. The idea scared him more than he expected. After putting Leo to sleep, Augustus and Camilla sat on the mansion's porch, sharing a rare moment of conversation alone. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us, Mr. Augustus, Camilla said, looking at the stars that dotted the August sky. You saved my son when he needed it most. You saved our family. Augustus shook his head. He saved me, Camilla. Before Leo appeared at my door, I was lost. Camilla studied him with her perceptive eyes. You're going to miss him, aren't you? Very much, Augustus admitted. More than I imagined possible. A comfortable silence settled between them. No more words were needed. Both understood the transformation they had witnessed, the silent miracle that had occurred in that house. He'll miss you too, Camilla said finally. But it doesn't have to be a final goodbye, you know. Our apartment isn't far from here. Leo can come visit you on weekends. If you want, of course. I would love that, Augustus replied, feeling a weight dissipate. Camilla smiled. And in that smile, Augustus saw a promise of new beginnings, not just for Leo and Camilla, but perhaps for him too. The next 2 weeks passed too quickly. Augustus helped Camilla with the move, guiding her in buying basic furniture and appliances. The apartment was small but well planned, with 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a tiny backyard. It was the first property Camilla had ever owned, and her pride was evident in every careful choice she made. Leo alternated between excitement at having a home with his mother again and sadness at leaving Augustus. On the eve of the move, the boy appeared in the office with a folded sheet of paper. I made a drawing for you, he said, handing the paper to Augustus, so you won't be sad when I leave. Augustus unfolded the paper and felt a lump in his throat. The drawing showed 3 stick figures, a tall man, a curly-haired woman, and a boy between them, all holding hands. Above, in colorful, uneven letters, was written, My Family. It's very beautiful, Leo, Augustus managed to say, his voice choked. I'll keep it forever. You'll still be my friend after I leave, right? Augustus knelt to be at the boy's height. Always, Leo, I'll always be your friend. On the morning of the move, as he helped load the last boxes into the car, Augustus felt a confused mix of emotions. There was pride in Camilla's progress, joy in seeing Leo reunited with his mother, but also a deep sense of loss. Camilla noticed his state of mind and, in an unexpected gesture, held his hand. It's not goodbye. Mr. Augustus, it's see you later. Leo, carrying his Spider-Man backpack, hugged Augustus tightly. I'll come visit you every Saturday, Mom promised. And we'll still play soccer in the garden, and you'll help me with my homework, and we'll have ice cream. Augustus laughed, discreetly wiping away a tear. It's a deal. And we'll finish reading that book about the planets. And you'll visit our house too, right? I have my own room now. I will, yes. If your mom invites me. Camilla smiled, still holding Augustus's hand. You're more than invited. For dinner on Sunday, perhaps? The invitation hung in the air like a promise, a door opening to something new. Augustus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the August sun shining on them. It would be a pleasure, he replied, and realized it was true. It would be a pleasure to continue being part of the lives of these people who had, unintentionally, saved his own. When the car finally left, Augustus remained at the gate, watching until it disappeared around the bend. Then he returned to the mansion, Silence greeted him, but now it was different. It wasn't the oppressive silence of grief, but the tranquil silence of reflection. Walking through the house, Augustus noticed the small marks left by Leo, a forgotten drawing on the living room table, a toy car under the sofa, a ball mark on the hallway wall. He smiled, knowing that the boy's presence would remain there, even in his physical absence. In the office, Augustus took the drawing Leo had given him and placed it in a simple frame, next to the photo of Marianne and Luke. Not to replace them, that would never be possible, but to honor the present and the past, the lost loves and the newly found ones. Sitting at the drawing board, Augustus began to work on a new project. This time it wasn't a house or a building, but a community playground for the neighborhood where Camilla and Leo now lived. As he drew, he thought of Camilla's words. Sometimes we need to live for someone other than ourselves. She was right. True healing was not in forgetting the past or denying the pain, but in making space for new connections, new purposes, in allowing oneself to love again, in different, unexpected ways. Outside, the garden he had begun to restore with Leo's help received the last rays of the afternoon sun. The rose bushes, which had been almost dead months ago, now displayed their first buds. It was as if nature itself wanted to remind him that even after the harshest winter, spring always returns. Augustus closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. He thought of Leo and Camilla in their new home, imagining them unpacking boxes, organizing the small space that was now theirs. He thought of Sunday dinner, of the sound of Leo's laughter filling a different house. When he opened his eyes again, he realized he was smiling. The glass mansion, which for so long had been a space of pain and painful memories, was now a starting point. A place from which he could go out into the world again, no longer imprisoned by the past, but guided by new possibilities. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Leo. "Mr. Augustus, we've arrived. Her apartment is so cool. There's a big tree in front and there's a dog in the apartment next door." As he listened to the boy's animated voice, Augustus felt a certainty grow within him. He was no longer alone. He would never be alone again. Life, which seemed to have ended 3 years ago, was just beginning anew,